months. General Lee thought it was time to march north because the Southern Army felt great about how the war was going. They're winning almost every big battle of the war in the east. Just won two big ones down in Virginia, Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville. It's a good time to start an invasion. But also Vicksburg, Mississippi, that's being attacked by the Union Army under General Grant. If they would win there, it would split the South in half. So Lee wants to put pressure in the east to Vicksburg. And also the war was going on for about 2 years, almost entirely in the South, getting short of supplies. The Union naval blockade becoming effective, choking off supplies coming in from Europe. France and England are still thinking about possibly recognizing the South as a separate country. So one way to prove to these countries to the South was strong, beat the Yankees in their own soil. And a lot of people in the North tired of the war. They wanted it finished. Lincoln's not a popular president by this time. A lot of people lost their sons. We had a battle before Gettysburg with 5,000 killed in one day. Where would that be, you Marylanders? Antietam or Sharpsburg. That was the bloodiest one-day battle of the Civil War. And then a month before Gettysburg, there were 30,000 people in New York City protesting the war. Lee knew it, read all the newspapers. He thought a Southern victim might create enough political pressure to get the war stopped. So Lee starts heading northward early June of 1863. First place to attack, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, 40 miles to the north. After that, he can threaten other cities like Philadelphia and Baltimore and Washington. The Union Army didn't realize the Confederates left. It took them 4 days to realize that. The Confederates snuck out. They kept men behind to keep their campfires lit across the Rappahannock River. But they start to see some red flags. The river's turned muddy. It hasn't rained. Somebody's crossed. You have to check that out. You got escaped slaves coming into the Union camps, deserters. Hey, they're cooking 3 days supply of food. So the Army's got to do some catch up to get up here. There's some record marches. One general, he marched 16,000 men, 35 miles in 17 hours. So you got to have some motivation to do something like that. And these guys are switching from a camp life, a comfortable camp life relatively, to being on the road. There was a lot of excitement going on the road, but there's a lot of dangers involved. You're in the rear end of an army of 100,000. You're getting the dirtiest water you can get. The biggest killer was amoebic dysentery. These guys are filling the canteens in the dirty stream. Where are the 100,000 people going to the bathroom at? And no job Johnnies up there, are they? And there's danger involved. You're mixing animals and vehicles. One soldier got kicked to death by a mule. One was killed by bloodhounds. Another guy had his thumb bitten by another soldier. He got gangrene and died from that. The biggest killer on the road was drowning. They didn't have a Y back then. They didn't take swimming lessons in the city. Almost 5,000 Union soldiers died drowning. They're going to cross these rivers. The rivers aren't level all the time. They hit a rock, they get out into a little gully under there, and they get swept away. Anyhow, 3 weeks into the march, Lee allows the main force of the Confederate cavalry under General Jeb Stuart to break away from the infantry, go behind the Union lines to burn bridges, capture supplies. Lee's causing himself some problems. The main job of the cavalry is reconnaissance. So Lee's coming up here without him. He lost track of the enemy. He didn't find out where it was at till he was all the way up here in Pennsylvania. He's 26 miles in front of us in Chambersburg. 3 days before the battle, found the Union Army just south of Gettysburg out in Maryland. Lee's caught off guard. His army is scattered over hundreds of square miles. Some of it's 40 miles away from him that way in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Some are 50 miles near the Harley factory in Newark. So he sent out orders to get to one place to get ready for battle. That place is a little town 8 miles on this side of the mountain called Cashtown. So that's how the Southern Army gets into this area. That was an accident. Nobody planned to fight it here. Then Lee found the Union Army and a brand new commander, George Meade from Philadelphia. Just replaced General Joe Hooker just 3 days before the battle started. Hooker quit. They woke Meade up at his tent at 3 in the morning. Meade thought he was being arrested at first. So later he was half asleep, he didn't know why he thought it. But he's shaken out of his sleep, putting him into this big army. Before they woke him, he was controlling 10,000. That was almost 100,000. He has the foggiest idea how well some of these units fighting out patrols. The army took over, is all scattered. There's no battle plan. Hooker took off. Didn't update him on anything. And he's got to use Hooker's staff to get through this battle. They're the guys that know what's happening. They know the orders in the pipeline, the condition of the troops, the whereabouts of the troops. And look who he has to face 3 days in front of this legend, Robert E. Lee. He's got a really big burden placed on his shoulders. Got to fight this battle very cautiously. He gets criticized for it, but he was kicked out of bed of this job. So the day before the battle started, the Confederates are concentrating up in the mountains. They sent men down the road, infantry. They reached this area. They saw dust clouds south of Gettysburg. These are Union cavalry. They're near where we're having the bike week, actually. They saw this dust. There are almost 3,000 horses kicking that dust up down there. These guys are under orders, do not start a battle yet. They're not concentrated. they pull back to the base of the mountains. So the Union cavalry under General John Buford rode through Gettysburg. You're going to put a battle line at McPherson's Ridge. That's the original McPherson barn. So that Union line went all the way that way to the far woods, all the way to the left to that place where we just turned back there. Then they'll send men out about a mile. That is an early warning system. You never just have the main battle line, this thinner line out in front to avoid surprise, called vedettes in this case. So the battle began July the 1st when the Confederates wanted to test their strength. First bullets are fired by these vedettes a mile in front of us. They work their way back to that ridge, and that's where the first Union cannon shot would be fired. That starts the Battle of Gettysburg. Now these Union cavalry soldiers are fighting dismounted. They can load their weapons better, they're better shot. When they fought that way, they lost 1/4 of all the men. Somebody has to hold all the horses while they're fighting. So 1 in 4 held horses in that low ground behind the bikes. So a lone line is 700 soldiers holding almost 3,000 horses where they're fighting over here. So they'll hold the Confederates off for about 2 hours. The Union infantry arrive, thousands of them. They pour across the theater, replace the cavalry. They're going to go off and guard your flanks, your sides, they're your weak spots. So now we eventually be fighting infantry. Later on, we get more Union troops. They're going to stretch the line all the way up past the traffic light. Then more Confederates attack out of that far tree line about noon. Throughout the first day, both sides kept getting help. Armies had to travel scattered back then. You put the Union Army in one road, for example, would be over 100 miles long. The end could never get into the fight. So to get them up close in case the battle starts, they travel on parallel roads. That way they're all within 1 or 2 days marching. So what we're saying here, the battle started, the armies are scattered, but now they're racing together to get into the fight. So the main armies wouldn't show up until July the 2nd. When they did show up, we have 97,000 Union soldiers, 75,000 Confederates. A lot of mouths to feed. We had 75,000 horses and mules. Drank 1 million gallons of water a day. 3 days they shot 7 million bullets. They missed a lot. Not to go and aim, they couldn't see their target. Didn't have smokeless gunpowder. The bigger the battle, less you see your target. Both sides generate huge quantities of white smoke. It hit you, it hit them. They had to throw about 30 pounds of metal just to hurt this battle, or just to hurt somebody in this battle. So by mid-afternoon, the Union Army is outnumbered by Confederates by more than 10,000. The Union Army has to retreat to the hills behind Gettysburg. They have trouble getting there. The town's a big obstacle. There are 12,000 men have to spree through 3 streets, which are clogged with walking wounded. There are ambulances and cannons and wagons. They had to break up into small groups. They lost the unity. They're running through backyards, breaking through wooden fences, running the cellars and getting captured. Cannons are being fired up and down the streets. So parts of Gettysburg has full-scale fighting. So much confusion. Out of the 18,000 Union soldiers fighting on July the 1st, 4,000 were captured. It turned out to be a strong Southern victory. But the Confederates got half free of the town, they stopped. That's where the first day's fighting would end at 4 in the afternoon of July the 1st. Some say the biggest mistake of the battle, they outnumbered the Union troops about 3 to 1. The Union soldiers, they had just fallen back to the hills, they weren't dug in yet. By waiting in town, they allowed most of the Union Army to come up that evening. Confederates could hear them over there chopping trees, they're digging, pushing cannons. The next day, those hills were covered with 80,000 ready to fight dug-in Union soldiers. And they start to take the advantage. The line starts to take the shape of a big fishhook. Not a military shape, but lay of the ground. There were 3 hills that made it up. Culp's Hill, Cemetery Hill, Little Round Top. We'll see some of them at the next stop we make. The Confederate Army arrives mostly down that road. They're going to wrap around the Union Hook. They're going to form one on the outside. It's going to be a lot longer. The Union Hook was 3 miles. Southern Hook was 6 miles. And they have fewer soldiers, just thinner. If they want to communicate from end to end, somebody has to ride 12 miles round trip to get an answer to a question. It's a half a day's ride. Plus the Yankees are defending a northern state to fight tougher. It's their country, it's their fans, it's their property. Some will fight to the death on home ground up here. We arrived to see the Union Army falling back down the road. He ends up putting his tent up here at the edge of town. And he's got a central location. He's got to be able to be called upon. Anybody has a problem, they have to know where that guy is. So there's all kind of activity going on in the headquarters. Couriers, orderlies running around giving orders, trying to get replenished supplies, whatever. Any questions at this point? Well, question?